and that the formal appointment will not take effect until the transitional constitution is in.
Proposal concern units like the Salisbury.
No, I don't think it would be right to say he'd rejected it. In fact, he, somewhat to my surprise, didn't spend as much time on that as some of the constitutional issues. But he said he wants to take it away and look at it seriously, and I think he should be entitled to do so. I mean, obviously this is a problem for him because he has claimed that the liberation forces should be excluded and that the future army should be based on exclusively on the Rhodesian Defence Forces. Well, this is not only, in my view, unacceptable, but is actually doesn't bear any relationship to the changed circumstances that will face a new independent Zimbabwe. There will, after all, have been an election involving a franchise of over 3 million people. It's currently been just an election on a franchise of about 97,000 people.
Did you tell Mr. Smith today that you found his views unacceptable?
We told him what we were going to say and explained that we did think that it would have to be based on the liberation forces, but that it would include acceptable elements of the Rhodesian Defence Forces, that those were the basis for the discussions, that they're going to have to be negotiations about this.
Who decides acceptability?
All of your talks today.
Well, I must say I was, I've been hearing about Ian Smith for years, and I was, well, I was personally pleased with our meeting. We didn't agree, of course, and yet we had, I think, a very good discussion for several hours.
Dr. Owen, is Ian Smith the only stumbling block for a negotiated settlement?
No, I think he's, judging from today and from statements during the election, I'm not convinced that he's totally accepted the constitutional framework of universal suffrage. I hope he has, because that is obviously an essential prerequisite. I'm not convinced that he's accepted that the way back to legality is through the legislative arrangements that we've set out. I think he is still believes that the way back is through legislating through his parliament, that maybe we can make some arrangement whereby that can be done, which would allow him then to go into the negotiations. There may be some arrangement on that.
My question, Dr. Owen, was, is he the only stumbling block?
No, I could detail to you, we could be here all evening if I could tell you some of the stumbling blocks. I mean, there are formidable difficulties. Somebody mentioned the whole question of how you forge a new national Zimbabwe army, which is loyal to whoever's elected the president. Now, all the nationalist leaders that are likely to fight in this election claim, I think with some measure of justice, that individual supporters in the liberation forces support them. The question is, and obviously there will be anxiety, that army, will it be able to be made into a genuinely neutral force supporting every president? Now, that's the task which we'll have to negotiate and then organize. And 6 months in a transitional period is not a long time to do that. But there's some safeguards. The president-elect is known before Independence Day, so he can have the final say in the composition and structure of the National Army. It may be possible for the UN force, at the request of the president, to stay on into the first few months of independence to give it some stability. But the basic thing is going to be to weld together this army. The danger otherwise of just leaving two armies intact and separate is very, very dangerous.
But Dr. Owen, isn't it true that both sides, or rather the four sides, have rejected completely a UN peacekeeping force in Zimbabwe?
No, I think I wouldn't jump to any premature conclusions either today, tomorrow. Let the dust settle for a while.
Foreign Secretary, do you think military leaders indicated that they would negotiate with the their enemies?
I believe they would if the politicians would let them.
Dr. Owen, Did Mr. Smith give any indication whatsoever that he would be willing to reconsider on his repeated, he has repeatedly said during the election campaign that he rejects one man, one vote and black majority rule. Did he indicate that he would be willing to reconsider on this?
I'm never quite sure what he did say during the election, but if he did say that, clearly it would cause great problems for this settlement, because that's basic. Universal suffrage. He asked a lot of questions about that. As I understand his position, if he's satisfied on a whole range of other things, he can accept this. But let him speak for himself. I think it's difficult to interpret. I don't want to prejudge his decisions. I can't say I'm wildly optimistic, but I encouraged him to take time. I'm leaving behind two officials. Mr. Varco, who's staying here in Salisbury, and Mr. Flynn, who's going to Bulawayo. And they'll be available to answer questions on what everybody agrees is an extremely complicated constitutional package and transitional package.
You can look at this package in a variety of ways. I say that most people look at it and there are about 80% of the things that make sense. There's about 20%, usually a different 20%, that they can find to disagree with. Now, all we're asking people to do is, let's see if we can't set up a framework over the next month to negotiate about that 20% that they disagree with, and see if you can't build an even larger consensus. Now, when you compare that process with the inevitable deterioration of human rights and increase in violence, and almost certain chaos, not only to this country, but to all of the surrounding countries, including South Africa. When you look at the economic strain that this war has put on this entire region of Africa, and you see what that kind of multinational conflict has done in the Horn of Africa, and you see that there's an alternative here of being reasonable or continuing down the path of stubborn resistance on both sides. I think that intelligent people on all